Over the hill is easier for a man than a woman.
I wasn't gonna say that. I wasn't gonna say that. But, my wife does a lot of hunting with me and, you know, oftentimes she gets in that situation too, and I really feel bad for her because it is much easier for guys. After all, it is much easier.
Okay.
Moving right along.
Before Roger says too much information. I need a motion to adopt the resolution of County of Lincoln approving the application and consent to the change of control of the cable television franchise of Southern Link Communications to an Nepresso Acquisition Corporation.
I'll say.
Motion second. All yes vote. Where's this at? Where's it at? What part of the county, you know?
I know that over in that end of the county has Southern Link. Because of their community concerns.
Have we, just something I missed, I need to ask before, just make me think of, with the expansion of Armstrong up the Guyan River and into Harts area, and putting in cable availability, has our revenue went up any? Do we know, have anybody noticed?
I didn't hear your question.
I know that Armstrong is expanding greatly up the Guyan River and into the Harts area, bringing cable to availability. And I hear people tell me they've signed up for it and they really like it, all this. I just wonder if our increase of revenue from the cable franchise fee, which is 5% or whatever it is, I just wonder if the total amount has increased.
Honestly, I have no idea.
It should. Maybe look at it sometime in your spare time.
Don't say that. Say, I need that done.
Okay, I need a motion
About the
to,
next meeting.
Yeah.
I need a motion to appoint Linda Whitman as fiduciary commissioner for the estate of Connor Tabor as requested by Jerry Alford, attorney for Barbara Tabor.
So,
Second. Motion second, being all yes, motion carries.
Next thing on the agenda is public comments. I know Janet needs to speak for the commission concerning an issue.
Janet?
Yes. I have provided a letter to the county commission requesting funding of an expense incurred for an investigation of stolen property. The amount is $577.50. It is 7 tow bills from Robbie's Record Service for four-wheelers that were discovered during an investigation that apparently is going to be turned over to the federal court system. The sheriff's office does not usually get billed for towing unless it's during a traffic stop in which the person who owns that vehicle ends up paying the tow bill to get their vehicle back. Obviously, in this case, when you have stolen four-wheelers, nobody's going to come and ask to pay a tow bill to get it back. So we're asking for the county's commission to fund that expense because there is no funds in the sheriff's budget to cover that type of expense.
But yeah, I did hear you say we will try to recover that, or at least try.
I am sure the sheriff and his chief law enforcement officer will pursue getting reimbursed for that expense.
Okay, sounds like we need to do that.
Okay, and commissioners, there is another bill that where the state police impound a vehicle that was at Robbie's that we have, and it was over $1,000. So should we put more money into this account so we can start paying the tow bills out of that?
I don't think so. I just think it's one of those things that we take case by case
Okay.
and deal with it because in this, we may have to come back and do this. Commissioner Mason, I spoke briefly with Mr. Watson this morning, was saying about the state police issue, and I just think we need to sit down with somebody from the state police and address it, find out what obligation do they have when they are the agency in charge, and they make the arrest, they do the impoundment. I just don't think unless if somebody tells us otherwise legally, we should take that obligation on. But I realize that the record service shouldn't have to go losing money by it either. I just think we just need to clarify that. Sheriff's our obligation, but state police seems to me like it's somewhere else. That's just my opinion.
So you want a motion to go ahead with this 577.50?
Please, yes.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Also,
Motion and second to provide the $577.50 to the sheriff's office.
and what I will have to do at the next, meeting, do a budget revision at that time, but this way we can go ahead and pay the
Pay it.
bill.
And all yes vote, motion carries. Thank you, Dan.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak at this time that is not on the agenda?
Hi, April.
How are you? I wanted to bring a program to the attention of the commission and the people here in the audience that I've been working on for a little while. And sometimes to get the shock and awe, I'll just throw the dollar number out. We've been working on this program, and it's been brought to our attention that it comes along with, at the very least, a $20 million budget that will not go away. It's not grant funded. It's been there. We've just not really looked at it in this way. But it's at least $20 million that nearly every single person in this county can access on their own without very much help from anybody. And that program's called Farm to School. And what we've been working on is trying to access funds that the boards of education spend on food service, in particular on the food that they buy on an annual basis. Just in Lincoln County for 2010-2011 school year, and I've not gotten numbers for this past school year, the board spent $872,000 on food. And they paid that to out-of-state vendors that sell food to the school, and more or less the way we've always seen that done. And the Farmer School program's been put in place in Child Nutrition Program in the Charleston office, and they are very actively pursuing options for local producers to access a portion of that money as much as we can possibly access. The only thing stopping us is the decision to do it on our own, or with help, or as a group of people. Cabell County spent $6 million in food last year. Now this is just food. This is not payroll. This is not extra other things. It's the food that they serve the kids every day. So I estimate just with Lincoln and our neighboring counties, which if we grow produce, we could sell to any county we want, not just Lincoln, but any county that you want to drive it to or get it to as a producer. Just us and our neighboring counties is where I'm getting this number, and this is just a real, what I think is probably a conservative estimate of about $20 million that's spent every single year in food costs for these kids. And they're going to keep eating. It's not going to go away. This isn't a grant that's going to dry up. It's not something that's going to go away because people eat. Kids need to eat, and they need to eat good quality food. So what we're working on now is, trying to get producers in a position where they can become vendors for the school. Now, it's not just as easy as putting a load of potatoes in the back of your truck, driving out to the school, unloading them, and the principal's going to hand you some cash. It doesn't work that way. But we are trying to make it almost as easy as that. I know most of the producers I've talked with, they want to grow things. They don't want to fool with business papers, and you start talking about business licenses and insurance and all these kind of things. They balk at that, and they just don't want to mess with it because they're thinking, well, I might sell, maybe 10 dozen eggs and a couple $100 of produce. Now, I'm talking large amounts of money. And there's an article in Lincoln Journal this week that I wrote up about this, but Mason County last month did a little project where they fed the kids in Mason County totally and completely 100% Mason County grown food. It was a hamburger with the bun. They took the wheat from Mason. They had it ground at Bernetti's. They made the rolls there. So all the buns came from food from Mason. The beef was ground up from steer that were bought at the fair from students in the FFA program as an after sale. They ground that up and made it into hamburger. And a lot of the people came back after this whole thing was over and said it's the best food we've ever eaten. And that just goes to figure because it was grown locally. It's going to taste better. But just in one day, potatoes, we'll just talk potatoes. They ate 2,250 pounds of potatoes in one day. So when you convert that at 50 cents a pound, which is the current reasonable pay that anyone else that wants to grow potatoes could expect, you're looking at $1,100 like that. I mean, you're gonna have to work a little bit, but I mean, that's not nickel and dime and a couple dollars here and $5 over there. That's one check that will come to you from the Board of Education if you've got that kind of produce. And of course, nobody's gonna start off with a lot like that, but potatoes are pretty easy to produce. $1 a pound for zucchini. Summer squash, same thing, 85 cents a piece for green peppers. The month of September, 5 Mason growers made $7,500 just selling food to the Board of Ed. 80,000 pounds of potatoes were utilized by the County of Mason last year, and I'm working on numbers for us as well. But given that the student numbers for us are pretty similar to Mason, I would at this point estimate that to be pretty similar in nature. And this is something we can do now. We don't, and I'm certainly glad to see infrastructure going into the county, the sewer, the waters. These things all make it easier for all of us. It makes it easier to bring businesses. It makes us more approachable and easier to get to as far as business go. But this is something that we can do now. And instead of seeing this $20 million going back out of here, you see this $20 million coming into here. And the good thing about this year is the State Board of Ed has put aside $250,000 for every single local purchase. Food service director can turn those local purchases into the state board, and they're reimbursing that 100%. And I know there's been discussion over lots of things about trying to keep funds in the school budget. And if you can recover 100% of whatever you turn in, that money can then go to pay counselors, or that money could go in to pay some of these other things that we need. And that's just for this year, so that's not the grab, but boy, that's a good incentive to get started. And it's open to anybody. So there's no reason that produce should be just sitting on a vine and rotting. Call your local youth organization, call the football team, have them come out and pick it if somebody's growing a big huge garden, which more of our experienced gardeners tend to do, and then they don't have anywhere for it to go. Call the football team, let them come out and pick it. They can take it to the school and sell it as long as they're a registered vendor, and then they can take that money and put it back in the program. And that's open to anybody. We just got to get you as a registered vendor. I'm working on workshops to do that where people can come in, sit down. I'll have some papers. You'll sit there in the office with us. We'll talk about this. You'll fill out the paperwork right there, the W-9, the business license registration, all of that. And by the time that workshop's over, at the end of that session, all the paperwork will have been completed to get that person or that organization registered as a vendor. And then that process, then I'll take the paperwork, take it to where they need to be put into the system, and in a couple of weeks, they're going to be able to call me or however we decide to work this plan and say, hey, I've got something I want to sell. Where do I take it? And then I can call Angela over at the board's office. Say, Angela, I've got 5,000 pounds of potatoes. Where do you want them? It's a grower down in Harts Creek. We'll take them to Harts PKA, get an invoice signed, and bring it over here to the board's office. Absolutely. Get back on the phone, take it to Harts PKA, get it signed for it. Then all they got to do is turn in the invoice, board meeting happens, you guys all know how this works, gets approved, they get a paycheck. That's simple, it's not hard. And right now, we're working on a plan with this. We have 3 pieces, the business part, the farming part, and the educational part, because I always like to throw that in. There's good life skill education options here for our kids. I can take a garden and teach you any subject in school you want to learn, without a doubt, and keep you outside all day. So there's opportunities here for us. Addressing food safety issues, absolutely, the health department. There's a lot of this that's going to be involved. I'm interested to find out what people are thinking about this. I want to do an assessment to find out why people aren't growing, what can we do to encourage that, what producers are producing, why aren't they selling it, why are they giving it away. We want to address that because if there's money to be made, there's no reason why we shouldn't be opening the door as wide as we possibly can for every single person in this county to step through that door and make the money that they want to make. And there's nothing stopping anybody from grabbing as much of that as they want to once we set this process up. So, and there's really, to me, there's no downsides to this. One might be not taking advantage of it pretty quick. We don't want to let this get away from us. This is a hot iron and we need to grab a hold of it. and pass it around so that we can all have a benefit from it. And not having a plan in place might be a downside of this, but I think if we bring the right people together and come up with a good plan, a good system to make sure it works, work the bugs out, make it easy on Angela so she's not taking on more than feeding my kids at the school. I want her concentrating on that, not managing farmers. Working with farmers to make sure that they're getting as much out of their crops and their product as they can. Managing deer, I know that's a big issue. I will deal with the deer issue. Don't let deer be a reason why you don't come talk to me about growing something, because I can help with that, and I plan to do that. We're going to address all of this, but I'm interested to hear from people. I can only make a program as good as what I hear from the people who are going to use it. I can make what I think I might want you to have, but it makes it a lot easier when I know what people need. I had a little girl yesterday, 4-year-old at preschool. I was working on a garden out there. She's hanging off the fence of the playground watching me work on this thing. I'm cutting boards and all that. And she was asking me why I was doing this. I said, well, we're going to put carrots in here. We're going to make it deeper because they need to grow deeper. She looked at me and said, well, why would you put my carrots in the dirt? And I looked at her, I said, well, honey, that's where carrots grow. And she looked at me like I was the funniest person she'd seen all day. But boy, I'm anxious to grab a hold of that little girl and grow some things out there, because she doesn't want to put her carrots in the dirt. So no, we'll wash that off, don't worry. But I mean, it's things like that that you really see potential. And there's so many things we could concentrate on that are negative, you know, I mean, and I really, there's no reason for that though. You know, it is what it is. Let it be what it is. We can focus on what we can do, the positive things that we can do, and once you've done those positive and you start working on those positive things that can push everybody forward in the county, not just a 2% of the group, or these people over here, those people over there. Once we start doing those things, those negative things will take care of themselves. We need to know they're there, but I think we need to not focus on them so much and put more of a focus on things over here we can do, because everybody, you know, kids always know when they've done something wrong. Adults kind of do too. You know, and you don't need to keep bringing that up in people's faces. What we need to do is focus on the positive things, because nobody likes to be preached to about what they've done wrong. I don't like it. My son certainly doesn't like it. He got a lesson this morning on the way about his grades. Grade cards go out next week, but it's hard sometimes not to do those things. But this is certainly, Rodney Wall Brown is the Mason County Extension Agent and has been in farming for 41 years. I've not had that kind of experience myself, but I will tell you what he said to me. He said to me and a group of other people, this is the best thing he's seen come along in the whole entire time he's been in that job. So I'll take that on good faith that Rodney knows what he's talking about. And we are sitting in a better place in Lincoln than any of our other neighboring counties to the north of us because of the land space that we have. Because of the number of people that we have in the county that do need to work and do need to make money. And then on top of that, our kids are going to get local produce, local food, and that can't be a bad thing. Anytime you can get local foods to kids that were just picked at your farm yesterday, you know, if somebody has a concern about their kids' food, well, Dr. Vance grew those tomatoes. If you're concerned about it, go on over to his place and ask him if you can come out there and look and see what he's doing. That just gives people more assurance with a lot of the issues with, you know, bioterrorism and food quality and food security and things like that. I can go to his farm and see what he's doing. Who knows where the tomatoes came from, and that's not to say that they're not safe. I wouldn't want to suggest that, but I like the idea of being able to go to your place and see what kind of egg you're going to. $3 a dozen for brown eggs right now is what's being paid. $3 a dozen. Now remember, this is a product. This is like a product stock market. That number doesn't stay there all the time. In the summer, things are a little less costly because the supply's there. In the winter, things are a little more costly. $10.35 for a dozen cucumbers. Watermelon, a 21 to 23 pound watermelon, about $5.48. And if it's organic, even more than that. So there's money to be made here, and I'm not talking just pennies. I'm talking, you know, thousands of dollars. 1 acre can produce nearly 20,000 pounds of potatoes. And to me, that's like going to the old tobacco market when I was a little kid. You know, that's Christmas money. And that's what a lot of people, that was the thing, the check that really got some people over that Christmas hump back in those days, was the option to take tobacco that they'd worked all summer to the tobacco market and sell it and get that big check that we bought clothes with and shoes and got all those things done, and then a couple of presents if we were lucky at the end of it. But this is certainly something that could be close to that, if not better. Number one, because we're not promoting a bad habit. And number two, we're promoting good habits. And it's just a win-win all the way around. So anybody who has any interest in this at all, please come see me. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'll be sending out these surveys. If you see them, encourage people to fill these out, because the more information, more feedback I get, the better we can make this. I don't want this to be all about what April Roach thinks or what I want people to have. I want this to be a real good community effort, and everybody has the option to participate in this. So I just wanted to make sure that I passed that to the group. It's kind of short fuse, but I didn't want to let it get away from us.
Good information
Thank you.
and a challenge.